All right, welcome in everyone to the deep dive. So today we're really going to get into it, a serious deep dive into an icon, really, the Honda Africa Twin 1100.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some incredible source material here, and we're going to try and pick it apart piece by piece to really figure out what makes this thing tick, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what's the power like? How does it perform? What are the features that set it apart? And how does it actually stack up against the, the big boys, the competitors in its class?
Right.
We're going
Right.
to look at all that. So think of this as your express lane, your fast track to really understanding everything about this legendary machine.
Yeah, and there is just a ton of information out there, right? You've got manufacturer specs, you've got expert reviews, you've got people on the forums talking about their experiences. What we're trying to do here is really synthesize that for you.
Exactly.
Give you a real clear picture of what this bike is all about, what matters, without you having to spend hours and hours and hours, sifting through all that.
Yeah, like who's got time for that?
Right.
I mean, that's what we do here, but
This is what we do.
But yeah, for you listening out there, we're going to try and shortcut that for you.
Yeah, consider a curated insight.
There you go. So we know you're looking to kind of get smart on this topic quickly, thoroughly, but without kind of getting bogged down. You don't want to get, bogged down.
Right.
So get ready to dive in because we're going to find out what makes this Africa Twin 1100 so special and maybe even a few things that might surprise you along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about this legend, the Honda Africa Twin 1100. It's more than just metal and rubber, right?
Yeah.
It's got a reputation for being this incredible bike. Like it's capable off-road, when you leave the pavement behind, but it's also a great bike to like rack up the miles on, out on the open road. Like how do they manage that?
Yeah. What's really fascinating when you dig into the history of this bike is just how deeply rooted that reputation is. As the sources really highlight, this story began way back in the late 1980s, and it's directly connected to the Dakar Rally.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most grueling, challenging off-road races in the world, and that's not just some marketing story. It's baked into the DNA of this bike.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see how Honda has kind of taken that original spirit and evolved it through the years, right, to create, the modern 2024 model with all of its updates and refinements and everything, while still holding on to that core DNA.
Right, and at the heart of this modern machine, that's what it is. A modern Racine is the 1084cc parallel twin engine. Now, I love numbers, you love numbers, our listeners love numbers, so let's get into it. We're looking at a solid 101 horsepower.
Okay.
And a very usable 105 millimeter of torque.
That's right.
But the real magic here, what really stood out in the material, is the way that power is delivered. It's not just about those peak numbers.
Exactly. It's not just about the raw numbers.
Yeah.
It's this really well-judged balance.
Yeah.
Right? You've got plenty of power when you need it, whether you're tackling, a steep climb on a loose surface or, you're passing a slow-moving vehicle on the highway. You've got the power there.
Right.
But it's delivered in a way that feels really predictable and inspires confidence. It's not intimidating.
Yeah.
And when we kind of zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture, that balance also extends to how efficiently it uses fuel, right?
Right.
So that figure of 4.9 liters per 100 kilometers, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
For a bike with this kind of capability. So you can cover some serious distances, without having to constantly be thinking about where the next gas station is.
Yeah, which is a big deal. You want to be out there enjoying yourself. You don't want to be stressing about fuel all the time. Now, speaking of enjoying the ride and fine-tuning the experience, we've got to talk about the transmissions. You've got the standard 6-speed manual, which a lot of riders are familiar with, of course.
Yeah.
But then there's this option for Honda's dual-clutch transmission, the DCT. This is a feature that always gets people talking. It's a little controversial sometimes.
It is. And I think it's worth understanding the flexibility that it offers, right? The DCT isn't just a straightforward automatic. It gives you options. You can go full auto, which is super convenient, if you're in stop-and-go traffic, you're commuting, or even if you're on those, those long stretches of kind of boring highway.
Yeah.
It can just make life a lot easier.
Right.
But then if you want to be more involved, you can flip it into manual mode.
Yeah.
And you've got paddle shifters right there on the handlebars, and you're in control. So it's really versatile, and Honda's been refining this technology for years now. The shifts are super smooth, really intuitive.
Okay, so we got all this power, but it's got to be kept in check, and that's where the suspension comes in.
Yeah.
The Africa Twins got Showa inverted forks up front with, get this, 230 millimeters of travel.
Wow.
And then in the rear, you've got a Showa ProLink rear shock with 220 millimeters of travel. Now, I know, suspension talk can get a little geeky.
Yeah.
But for those of us who maybe aren't suspension experts, what's the real benefit of having all that travel? What does it actually do for you as a rider?
Okay, so think of it this way. It's the bike's ability to soak up bumps and imperfections in the road, or no road at all, right?
Yeah.
Like if you ride off-road, things get rough.
Right.
That longer travel, that means the wheels can move up and down a lot so they stay in contact with the ground even when it's really uneven. And what that means for you is a more comfortable ride, for sure, especially when you're off-road. But it also means better handling and stability because your tires are in contact with the ground more of the time.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, and the fact that you can actually adjust the suspension settings, that's huge. You know, you can dial in the feel of the bike based on your weight, if you've got luggage,
Right.
or just the type of riding you're doing.
Right. Okay, let's talk about stopping. Braking is obviously critical, especially on a bike that's designed for, high speed, touring, and also potentially like gnarly off-road situations.
Yeah.
We're talking about dual 310 millimeter front disc brakes with 4 piston calipers and a 256 millimeter rear disc brake with a single piston caliper.
Sounds like some serious stopping power.
It does.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got this advanced ABS system, which, we know ABS, it's a safety feature.
Oh, yeah. It's essential these days.
What's really cool, though, and I think this is smart, especially for the off-road folks, is you can deactivate the ABS on the rear wheel.
Yeah.
For those experienced riders who like to, get a little loose in the dirt.
Right. For those who know what they're doing.
Exactly. Being able to lock up that rear wheel, it can actually be a good thing in certain off-road conditions.
It gives you more control in certain situations.
Yeah, so that's a nice touch, I think. And speaking of off-road and adventure, range is always a big consideration.
Absolutely, yeah.
You don't want to be out there in the middle of nowhere and run out of gas.
No.
So the Africa Twin addresses that with a 24.8-liter fuel tank.
That's a lot of gas.
That is a big tank. And when you combine that with the fact that the engine's pretty fuel efficient, like we talked about,
Yeah.
you're looking at a serious range.
Yeah, you can go a long way in a tank.
Multi-day trips, no problem.
Yeah.
Now let's get into the bones of the bike, the structure. The sources highlight this lightweight steel frame with a semi-double cradle chassis. Now, I know that sounds a little jargony.
Right.
But what does that actually mean for how the bike feels and performs?
Okay, so basically, this type of frame design, it's all about balance.
Yeah.
Right? You want it to be strong and rigid for stable handling, especially at speed or when you've got luggage.
Right.
But you also want to keep the weight down so the bike is agile, especially off-road.
Yeah, makes sense.
And this semi-double cradle design, it's known for being really robust, which is exactly what you want if you're going to be taking it off the beaten path.
Right. You want a bike that can take a beating.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got a good understanding of the engine, the chassis, the real nuts and bolts of the Africa Twin. But a modern adventure bike, it's got to be more than just the mechanical stuff these days, right?
Yeah.
The electronics package, that seems to be a huge part of what makes this bike special.
It is. The Africa Twin 1100, it's loaded with electronic aids designed to both enhance the riding experience and improve safety. The 7 selectable riding modes, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, 7, that's a lot of modes.
It is. And these aren't just, marketing gimmicks. They actually change how the bike behaves. They adjust the throttle response, the traction control, the ABS, all to suit different riding conditions.
Right.
And then on top of that, you've got 2 customizable user modes, so you can really fine-tune it to your liking, to your riding style, exactly how you want it.
That's cool. It's like having a custom-tailored motorcycle.
It is.
And we can't forget about the centerpiece of it all, right? The cockpit.
Oh, yeah.
That 6.5-inch TFT touchscreen display.
It's beautiful.
It really does. It looks like a spaceship command center right there on the handlebars.
It's a modern marvel.
It is.
And the fact that you can integrate your smartphone, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, that's huge for riders these days. You can seamlessly access your navigation apps, music, even take calls, all displayed clearly on the screen.
Yeah, it's like having your whole digital life right there with you on the bike.
It is. It is. And then you've got things like cruise control, which is, I mean, a lifesaver on long rides.
Yeah.
It reduces fatigue so much. And then all the safety features, the traction control, the wheelie control, the cornering ABS, all those systems working together.
Yeah.
It just gives you a lot more confidence and safety, especially when you're in unexpected situations or, the road gets a little sketchy.
Right. It's like having a guardian angel riding with you.
It really is.
Now, behind the scenes, behind all those cool features, is this little piece of tech called an IMU, right?
Mm-hmm.
Inertial measurement unit.
That's right.
It's like the bike's internal gyroscope, right?
Yeah, it's constantly measuring the lean angle, the pitch, the yaw.
Yeah.
And that information is crucial for those electronic aids to work properly.
Yeah, especially the cornering ABS.
Exactly.
Which can adjust the braking force based on how the bike is leaning.
Right. It's pretty amazing.
It is. It's really smart technology.
Yeah.
So moving on from the tech, let's talk about the looks, the visual aspect of the bike.
Okay.
The sources talk about this aggressive front-end design with those twin LED headlights. Mm-hmm.
And those integrated daytime running lights, it's got a real presence,
It does. It does. And it's not just about looks. Those LED headlights, they're bright.
Yeah.
You can see and be seen at night, much better visibility, which is a big safety factor.
Mm.
And the daytime running lights, again, visibility, making sure other drivers see you during the day.
Right.
And that tall, adjustable windscreen, that's all about rider comfort.
Yeah.
Especially on long rides at higher speeds, that wind protection makes a huge difference.
It does, yeah. Reduces fatigue, keeps you more comfortable.
Exactly.
Now, the sources also mentioned the slim fuel tank design.
Mm-hmm.
And how that's beneficial for both maneuverability and how your legs kind of fit on the bike.
Right.
I can see that being important, especially off-road when you're standing up on the pegs, moving the bike around.
Yeah, you don't want to feel cramped.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. You need freedom of movement.
Exactly. A wider tank would just get in the way.
And the Africa Twin, it's designed for you to move around, whether you're sitting or standing, and still have plenty of fuel on board. So it's a good balance.
Right. The best of both worlds. And speaking of comfort, long days in the saddle, that's what adventure riding is all about, right?
Absolutely.
The sources highlight that wide, well-padded, adjustable seat,
Yeah.
the relatively high handlebars and the foot pegs, the way they're positioned. It sounds like Honda really thought about rider comfort here.
Oh, yeah. They definitely put a lot of effort into ergonomics,
Yeah.
making sure it's comfortable for a wide range of riders.
Yeah.
The adjustable seat height, that's huge.
Yeah.
It means more people can find a comfortable riding position and reach the ground.
Right.
The handlebars being a little higher, that's easier on your back, your wrists, especially on long rides.
Yeah.
And the foot pegs, they're positioned so you can be comfortable whether you're sitting down or standing up.
Right. Smart.
And, we can't forget about the Adventure Sports ES model.
Oh.
That one has electronically adjustable suspension, which takes things to a whole other level.
Yeah.
You can actually fine-tune the suspension on the fly.
Oh.
Depending on the road conditions, if you've got a passenger, luggage, it's amazing.
It's like a magic carpet ride.
Pretty much, yeah.
So last but not least, the overall design, the adventure-ready build quality, they really emphasize that in the sources.
Yeah.
That tough steel frame, the skid plate underneath to protect the engine, spoked wheels, lots of ground clearance. It all screams adventure,
Yes, it does. It's built for going off the beaten path.
Yeah.
The spoked wheels, especially that 21-inch front wheel, they're way more durable than cast wheels.
Mm-hmm.
They can handle those impacts.
Yeah.
And the ground clearance, you need that to get over obstacles without, smashing the underside of the bike.
Right.
And the skid plate, that's just essential protection for the engine.
Yeah. Peace of mind for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's just recap really quick all the key features we talked about here. We've got that powerful, efficient 1084cc parallel twin engine with its clever unicam design, the option for that DCT, that dual clutch transmission,
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of safety and performance features controlled by that IMU, that smart little computer brain.
Right.
Multiple levels of traction control, cornering ABS, different riding modes that you can choose from, and even customize.
Yeah.
A strong but lightweight steel frame, long travel suspension, plenty of ground clearance, tough spoked wheels with those adventure-ready tires, that beautiful full-color TFT touchscreen that connects to your smartphone,
Mm-hmm.
an adjustable windscreen to keep you comfortable,
Yeah.
a large fuel tank, especially on the Adventure Sports model, And just an overall reputation for being, a rock-solid, reliable machine.
It's a really impressive package when you put it all together.
It is. I'm kind of blown away by all the features this bike has.
Yeah.
But how does it actually stack up against the competition? There are other bikes out there vying for the adventure rider's attention. The sources we've got here actually do a pretty good job of comparing the Africa Twin to some of its main rivals.
They do. They do.
So let's start with the big one, right? The BMW R1250 GS.
The benchmark.
The benchmark.
Yeah.
They often call it that in the adventure touring world, the one that everyone else is kind of chasing. The sources describe it as a premium touring powerhouse.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair.
I think that's a pretty accurate assessment.
Wow.
It's got more power than the Africa Twin. That Boxer twin engine is a real workhorse.
Yeah.
And it's known for being super comfortable for those long hauls.
Right.
And it's loaded with technology.
Yeah.
All the latest and greatest electronics.
Right. BMW doesn't mess around when it comes to tech.
They do not.
But it's also heavier than the Africa Twin.
Yeah.
And
no,
it's usually quite a bit more expensive.
It's definitely a premium option.
Yeah, and maybe not quite as focused on serious off-roading, The GS, it's more of a road-biased adventure bike.
Yeah, it can handle some dirt roads and gravel, but it's not really a hardcore off-road machine.
Right. It's for the rider who wants to go everywhere, but maybe not necessarily on the most challenging trails.
Exactly.
Okay, so next up, we've got the KTM 1290 Super Adventure R, and our sources call this one a high-performance off-road beast.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty intense.
Oh, it is. It is. KTM, they're known for making some serious performance machines.
Right.
And the 1290 Super Adventure R, it's got the most powerful engine in this class, usually.
Wow.
The electronics are top-notch, cutting edge. The suspension is amazing. But it's one of the most expensive bikes in this category.
Yeah.
And that power, it can be a bit much for some riders.
Right.
Especially if you're not super experienced.
Yeah, it's a lot of bike to handle.
It is. It's definitely not for the faint of heart.
Okay, so moving on, we've got the Yamaha Tenere 700. Now, this one is described as a lightweight and affordable adventure choice. It's kind of a different approach here.
Yeah, it's a bit more back to basics. The Tenere 700, it's much lighter than the Africa Twin, any of the other bikes we've talked about.
Yeah.
Which makes it really, really capable off-road.
Yeah.
It's nimble, it's agile, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's also more affordable.
Right.
But it doesn't have as much power, obviously.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have all the fancy electronics.
Yeah.
It's more, stripped down, simple machine.
Right. So it's for the rider who really values simplicity and off-road capability and value for money.
Exactly.
Okay, and finally we've got the Ducati Multistrada V4. This is an interesting one. The sources describe it as where adventure meets superbuck performance.
Yeah, that's Ducati for you.
I mean, it sounds pretty exciting.
Oh, it is.
Ducati, they're known for making beautiful, high-performance machines.
They are, and they've brought that to the adventure touring segment with Multistrada V4. It's got the most horsepower out of all the bikes we've talked about. It's got all the bells and whistles, radar cruise control. It's a premium bike.
Right.
It's also very expensive.
Right.
And it's not as off-road focused as some of the others, like the Africa Twin or the KTM.
Right. It's more of a paved road, maybe some light off-road kind of bike.
Exactly.
So looking at all these competitors, it's a pretty competitive field.
It is.
But the sources we've looked at, they seem to agree that the Honda Africa Twin 1100, it really strikes a good balance between off-road capability, touring comfort, and affordability.
Yeah, that's what makes it so appealing.
It does.
It might not be the absolute best in any one area, but it's a really solid all-rounder. It's good off-road, it's comfortable on the road, it's got all the tech you need, and it's not going to break the bank.
Right. So it's a really well-rounded package.
Exactly.
So I think after this deep dive, we've really gotten a good understanding of what makes the Honda Africa Twin 1100 such a popular and respected motorcycle. It's not just living off its legacy, It's a modern bike with a lot to offer.
Absolutely. The way Honda has combined the engine, the suspension, the electronics, it's clear that they designed it for real-world adventure riding.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it hits that sweet spot for a lot of riders. It's capable enough to handle some challenging terrain, but it's also comfortable enough for those long rides.
Right. It's not too extreme in either direction.
Exactly.
It's kind of the Goldilocks bike.
Yeah.
Just right.
Just right.
So here's a final thought for you all out there listening. Thinking about, the balance that the Africa Twin strikes so well,
Hmm.
what aspect of adventure writing really speaks to you? Is it the pure off-road stuff, the technical trails, the mud, the rocks?
Yeah.
Or is it more about those epic journeys, crossing continents, racking up the miles?
Hmm.
Or maybe it's somewhere in between, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And how does a bike like the Africa Twin, with its versatility, how does it fit into your adventure riding dreams? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time.